I'm just lucky.
Yeah,
That's it.
yeah.
I find the arrogance of the atheist position to be quite amusing so many times.
Yeah, I am Bhavya Arora.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Okay, so you wanted to talk about I believe in Sky Daddy, which makes my
Yeah.
politics irrational. So you were going to tell me an example of a political position I have that you find is based on my irrational belief in God.
Well, I used to think that you're such a rational and logical person,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a surprise to me that you believe in a God. That I said it's discrediting
Mm-hmm.
because it tells me that you're coming at things with a flawed thought process. It
Okay,
it discredits your politics.
so fair enough. So before we even get into a religious debate, you think that means that I'm coming at things from a flawed angle. That would mean that my conclusions that I would reach in a political framework would end up being flawed because the basis of my ideological belief is flawed in itself. Is that fair to say?
No, not necessarily. You can stumble onto the right thing by accident, which you do. I agree with you in a lot of things.
So you can't give an example of a political position you think of mine that's erroneous that comes about from my belief in God.
Did I say I was going to give you an example?
You did not. I asked if you were, and you said, I'll call in.
No, I said you're discrediting. It discredits your politics because it tells me that you have a false thought process, a flawed
So,
thought process.
so can you give me a political position of mine that you've heard that you disagree with?
No, because you accidentally stumble onto the right things a lot of the times.
So you would say, would it be fair to say that I have a lot of political opinions that I've given on my show that you've heard? That would be fair?
Yeah, I mean, I've only heard you on Destiny.
Okay, but you think that every single one of those correct positions I have, I've just haphazardly stumbled upon.
Yeah, it's impressive, you know?
Well, I would think that maybe the sheer statistical improbability of that would make you reframe your assumptions.
Well, no, I think you're really lucky in that regard, I guess.
I'm just lucky.
Yeah,
That's it.
yeah.
I find the arrogance of the atheist position to be quite amusing so many times. You're so certain that you're correct that even when you're listening to someone who you agree with and you can't find an area to disagree when it comes to like practical political matters, you still assume that I must be some irrational, unhinged person. And literally, you can't give any credit to like sort of my thought process or anything, even though you agree with me, because you're like, well, you must just be lucky and you've stumbled upon. And you not for a minute does it take you a step back to hesitate and say, well, wait a minute. Maybe just because I don't believe with this guy's religious beliefs, that doesn't mean that his thought process is skewed to the point where it discredits everything he believes. It doesn't, you don't even pause for a second to believe that. It reeks of an arrogance, I think, that would discredit your political thought process.
Well, it does reek of arrogance, and I think it's well deserved. I mean, if you told me the sky is red, I would be just as arrogant, and I think I would deserve to be just as arrogant.
Well, that's
I mean, it's
fine.
insane.
It's not the same.
It's
It's not the
insane
same
to
as.
me.
It's not the same as saying the sky is red, though, because to claim that the religious debate is so settled, just like I've heard atheist after atheist make these arguments in the past. I used to be an atheist. I used to make these sort of arrogant arguments myself. Like to have that amount of
Well,
credibility
it
of
was settled. Well, Rob, I mean, I don't know if you know this, but I've been in this rabbit hole for quite some time, and um,
so
this
what like it?
yes, I want to tell you something about it. So this debate was settled thousands of years ago. I mean, have
Was
you heard of the? I mean, I don't really talk about religion much, so I can't remember the name offhand, but it was some sort of a paradox. Have you heard of it? Um, wait, let me Google
So
it
wait,
real quick.
let me just be clear here. You're someone who's so certain of your beliefs that you hear my political positions, you agree with my political positions, but as soon as you hear that I believe in God, you say that discredits all of your political positions, and clearly you've only came to them because you're lucky. Because in your words, you've been in this sphere sort of debating religion, I assume is what you mean by being involved in this for a long time. And yet you don't then you quickly go to, but I don't talk about religion enough and it's been settled for 2,000 years. Are you aware of this paradox? I don't even remember what the name of it is. It sounds to me like your sense of arrogance is coming from a position where you can't even effectively articulate the most common principles that you're entering into the debate with.
So I just remembered it. It's called the Epicurean Paradox. This was made thousands of years ago, and I think it totally obliterates, destroys, that I don't know how to pronounce that word, but it destroys uh, religion.
Well,
So,
I'll tell you
this
what.
was
I'll tell you
thousands
what
of
we'll
years
do.
ago.
No, by no means am I a religious scholar. I'm admitting that I'm a bad Christian, right? And I've never heard of the Epicurean Paradox. So here's what we'll do. If you're so sure that it's destroyed the argument for religion 2,000 years ago and the debate's been settled, surely then, as someone who's familiar with it, you'll have no problem absolutely devastating someone like me that's never heard of it, and you'll be able to easily prove to me and everyone else here listening that God doesn't exist. So go ahead.
Yeah, so it's a flowchart, so it's a little hard to put in words because it's a flowchart. You can Google it and show it on your stream right
I'm
now.
cool. I don't need to. You can put it in your own words. It's such, obviously, if it devastated the argument for religion, you'll be able to articulate it. You're familiar with it, so I trust you can
Well,
articulate it.
I can try, but
Have
it's a
at.
flowchart. It would be a little hard, and I may not do as good of a job as I want to because it's a flowchart. But anyways,
Okay,
so
let's
it
hear it.
starts.
We'll give you the
So
floor.
yeah,
Go.
it starts with premise number one that evil exists, and then it says, well, can God prevent evil?
Mm-hmm.
And then it deviates into two parts. So if yes, well, I'll go with the no first. Well, it says yes and no.
Mm-hmm.
So if the answer is that God cannot prevent evil,
Mm-hmm.
then God is not all powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So that debunks religion. But if you're saying, well, God can prevent evil, then the question is, does God know about all the evil? Well, and if you answer no to this, then it also debunks religion because God is supposed to be all-knowing.
Okay.
But if you answer yes to this question, then it says, does God want to prevent all evil? Well, if you answer no, then well, God is not a good person, a good whatever. Then that debunks religion because God is supposed to be a good thing, God, right? But if you answer yes to this question, then the question is, then why is there evil?
So it sounds to
So
me. It sounds to me like something that every person in Sunday school, a problem that they've thought of, that you are saying that that's called the Epicurean Paradox, which it may be. I'll take your word for it. And
mhm.
that this is somehow some deep philosophical thought that completely shreds the idea that God could be real. That's what you're saying. That your big argument here is, well, if evil exists, how could God exist? Either he himself is evil by allowing evil to exist and he could prevent it, or he can't prevent it, which means God doesn't exist. That's it. That's your proof
Well,
that 2,000 years ago that the argument for God was completely devastated. That's your proof?
yeah, the good old Epicurean paradox from 2000 years ago
Okay.
debunks religion.
So
Yeah.
then, now I've never argued this, and I'm not a prolific religious debater, but let's wade into the field. First thing I would ask you is, can you define evil?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really like this definition game that you people do in these debates because I mean, we know what evil is,
Do
and
we?
uh, yeah, we do. We have an intuitive understanding. We have a very good intuitive understanding of what evil is. I don't have to define it. I mean,
Well,
you
why
know
don't
it.
you
Be honest.
define it in the way that the Epicurean Paradox is defining? What do they mean by evil? Do they mean like for example, I might say something is evil like this: stealing from an old woman is evil. Is that what they mean by this paradox? So if we just take that one example, that's an example of evil. Do you agree?
Yeah,
So if a human being steals from an old woman, we'll just take that one example. You agree that's an act of evil.
yeah, I
And you
agree.
would say
Yeah.
that the fact that that happened means, even if that was the only act of evil that happened, that would be sufficient to prove this paradox, right? Or for this paradox to prove God doesn't exist, correct? Because that would be an act of
Yeah.
evil. And that's all we would need is one act of evil, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so given that, you're saying the fact that either one of two things is possible. Either God knew that that guy was about to steal from that old woman, and he chose not to intervene, which proves that God is malicious, and so therefore can't exist. A virtuous God can't exist, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Or it proves that God didn't know that that guy was going to steal from that woman, which proves that God isn't omniscient, and therefore he's not God.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
What if God gave us free will? What
Uh-huh.
if God knew? What if God knows the outcomes? He knew the
So
outcomes of
Rob,
giving people free will, but he still allows us to have free will, knowing that there would be undesirable outcomes.
Rob, here's the thing. You're gonna make the uh, yet again the good old, well, it's because free will argument. Well, the thing is, cops, the police, they exist. They prevent crime. They prevent evil. God can do the same thing. I don't understand this whole free will argument. God should just act like, some sort of a police. They don't. Do they violate our free will? No, they don't. So, I mean,
It's an
just
absurd. It's an absurd claim. What kind of God would it be? A virtuous God if we were just automatons that were pre-programmed to only do right? Would you consider that a virtuous God? If basically we were
yeah,
just
God,
machines with a
yeah,
machine creator, I disagree. I would think that that would be. I would think that would be less godlike. I think, and I think that you also make the mistake of thinking that our ability to understand, to arrogantly think that we're the end all be all of understanding of not just morality, but also understanding sort of intelligence. Like it's difficult for us to comprehend what an all-knowing creator would do. For example,
Rob, I wanna stop you
if
there.
you can stop me in a second. For example, if you like created an ant farm, right? You bought an ant farm or you created one for ants. You might know that certain bad outcomes could happen amongst these ants, but you could basically just. It's not a good example. I guess what I'm trying to say is we're one small grain of sand on one small marble. And thank God we have free will. Thank that to me, earning our way into the good graces of God is sort of one of the things that I think makes life beautiful. The fact that I
Well,
have free will to sin
I
and
wanna
I
stop you.
go ahead, you can stop me. You're clearly a
Yeah,
philosophical and religious scholar of epic proportions. So by all means stop as I'm making my point. Please. You have
okay.
something now every audience, I want you to
Yeah,
listen. He's going to stop me. He has something very important to say. Go ahead.
yeah, I do. Yeah, so this is the Epicurean paradox. It's just a silly, small little thing I just mentioned. You don't have to
I'm going to
spend. We don't
stop you
have to
right
spend
there.
too much time on
I'm
this.
going to
Hold on.
stop.
We
I'm
don't
going to
have to
stop
spend
you.
too much
I'm
time
going
on
to
this.
stop you right there.
How
So
about
we're going to let you go. I'm going to
everything?
stop you. I'm going to stop you right there. And we're going to let you go
I thought
because
we
when
would
you
just
come in and
spend 2
say,
minutes
I'm
on
going to
this, not
stop
10
you right
minutes.
there. I'm going to stop you right there. If you're going to come in and say this debate it was settled 2000 years ago because of this argument. And then I say, "Okay, I've never heard this particular argument. I don't consider myself someone who wades into religious arguments." I'm more than happy to do it. And as soon as we start discussing it, you go, "Let me stop you right there. This is just a flippant argument I made. It's just one little thing. I have no
Well,
interest in having a discussion
Rob,
with
I'm
you
not
on
here
it.
to
So
win an
thank you so
argument.
much. I
Rob,
really appreciate you coming on. Yeah, I'm sorry, you have a better argument now? That's what you said. So you led with the argument that you
yeah,
said.
so,
Now, I just want to be
yeah,
clear.
I just want to
I
say one
simple yes,
thing.
no. We'll see if we continue with this conversation. I just want to be clear. You led with the argument that you said disproved Christianity 2,000 years ago, and now you're saying, but actually, that's not even a good argument. I have a better one. That's what you're saying now?
Well, no, I'm not saying it's not a good argument. I'm saying that we should move on. I'm not here to win an argument. I was here to genuinely convince you. I'm a fan of yours. I like you. I agree with you. I was just here to convince you. I'm not here to win an
No, no, no,
argument.
no.
I
If
thought you, I thought
the
I thought you
glazing
would
of
just Rob, just hear me out. I thought
the
you would just
glazing of no,
interpret
like
something.
the glazing of let me stop you, let me stop you. I want to say something, and the glazing, or I get, and then saying that my entire thought process is flawed and I don't have good ideas. I just got lucky and stumbled on things. But then as soon as we start having a discussion about the topic that you brought in that you wanted to discuss, and you have to interrupt me to say, actually, it's not something that I really want to talk about. Oh, by the way, I like you. I don't care. I'm not saying you're a terrible person or I wish ill on you. What is the relevance of me having this conversation with you? If you're going to say
Well,
this argument ended Christianity or ended belief in God 2,000 years ago, and I'm unfamiliar with the term Epicurean Paradox, but I sort of am familiar with this type of argument, and we start to hash it out a little, and you immediately backtrack and are like, no, thank you. I'll tell you what I'll do for you. This isn't my area of expertise, but I'm more than willing to have these debates and just be honest and give my honest opinions. But seeing as how you're someone who's very informed on this, why don't I set you up with a debate with my friends Jim Bob or Andrew Wilson or Jay Dyer that talks about these religious debates all the time? Surely you would be able to epically destroy them. No, no, wait. Before
there's
you
a
answer,
problem with that.
surely you would be able to devastate them. right? Because you,
Yeah,
not only do you know that the argument is so settled that anyone that believes it, they can't be trusted in any of their political opinions, but clearly you have a 2,000-year-old understanding of how this has been devastated 2,000 years ago. And so I think it would be a great opportunity for you to reach out to a bigger audience, and you would be able to devastate the idea, surely once and for all.
well,
Many people have
there's a
tried
slight
before you,
problem.
but you'll be able to devastate them. I think it'll be great to listen to.
Yeah, this paradox, this is just a small silly thing, but the reason I think it's so ridiculous for you to believe in religion is not just because of this little paradox from 2000 years ago. It's because everything about religion is so ridiculous. How can you live in the modern scientific world that you live in and still think uh of a sky daddy? I mean, there's no evidence for it. It's just a story, just like any other fiction, just like any other piece of fiction. So, this is why this is like saying the sky is red. I don't have any counter argument for this because it's just so ridiculous. I feel like you shouldn't even believe in this.
I mean, that's not really an
And also,
argument. It's not, the analogy of the sky is red doesn't apply, right? Because you could say we could see the physical sky, we could see that it's been reported blue, we could look like use scientific devices to see microscopically the light types, wavelengths that reflect from light. So there's all sorts of evidence you could bring to why the sky is red. Give me evidence that God doesn't exist.
well, I can't. I'm an agnostic atheist. So can you prove that God exists?
No, wait a minute. If you're agnostic, that's different than being an atheist, correct? So is your belief that you are undecided on if God exists or not?
No, I say God doesn't exist. Well, technically, I would have to be agnostic on the existence of unicorns as well. We all would have to be, or technically, but that's not how the world works. If there's no positive evidence for the existence of something, we just say that that thing doesn't exist. We don't
Okay.
need
However,
negative evidence for something's existence.
whatever term you want to use to define yourself, atheist or agnostic, you are so staunch in your beliefs that you believe someone who believes counterly that if there was a God, that makes them completely illogical to the point that if they have real world positions that you agree with, they couldn't have came there through rational thought process. Instead, it was pure chance that they came. That's how certain you are in your belief that God doesn't exist.
Yeah, I would bet my life on it. Yeah.
You would bet your life on it. Okay. Sorry, man. I got to let you go. I can't. I'm trying to be cool with this and engage with it, but the internet's just not working for you. So.